My name is Rebecca Cooley. I'll be your moderator for today. I'm logged in live from the AOS studio in downtown New Orleans. Again, I just want to remind everyone to please keep your cameras turned off and your phones muted so that our panelists can be the star of the show today. We've enlisted 5 of our local industry experts to share their insights on one of New Orleans' strongest economic opportunities, our largest employer in our city, and obviously a staple to maintaining our rich culture here in New Orleans. So obviously we're talking about the hospitality industry. So first what we'll do is kick off with introductions of each of our 5 panelists. So Patrick, why don't we start with you?
Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Schindler. I'm with Felicity Property Company. I lead our development efforts here as well as our property management and collaborate with our brokerage team. We're involved in hospitality from a real estate perspective, and then also have operating interests in auction house market. And we're partnered with Ladder Hospitality and a restaurant that we opened 3 days before COVID called Bauer, and then a Claret Wine Bar, which is in the Lower Garden District.
Thank you. And we'll look to hear more about the restaurant that you were about to open right before COVID to see how everything's going. Caroline Farouki, why don't we go to you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Farouki, partner of Farouki. We're an architecture and interior design company. When we do interiors, it's a lot of hospitality work, restaurants, hotels. We do have several multifamily projects right now. But yeah, hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Steve Pettus.
Hello. Good morning. I'm Steve Pettus. I'm managing partner of Dickie Brennan Company here in New Orleans. We operate about 6 restaurants here in New Orleans, one of which was born during the pandemic, or we say was born during a hurricane, which is our newest baby. So it's been a lot of fun. Sorry.
Thank you. And Brian Englehart. Brian, I don't think I can hear you.
I'm muted. Okay, I was. Sorry. Good morning, Brian Englehart. I am the general manager at the Maison de la Luz. And we've been open about a year, and we kind of joke internally here that we're looking at our second opening in less than a year. So we've never closed during the pandemic. We are also obviously in a
Great, thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have Michael Sawaya on the line.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Sawaya. I'm the president and general manager of the Ernest and Morial Convention Center. Happy to be here this morning and looking forward to this discussion.
Michael, can you turn your camera on?
Apparently not.
No, that's okay. We'll just have them phoning in this morning. Well, I want to thank you all again for taking this time. We obviously had a huge attendance and excitement around today's topic. So we'll just dive right in and hear from you guys, the expert. Obviously, this is not the first time that we here in New Orleans have had to respond quickly to a natural disaster. And so resiliency is kind of becoming our second nature. It obviously takes a lot of innovation, creativity, and reinvention. So I want to hear from each of you as sort of how you, as an operator, have been responding to the COVID-19 crisis. Particularly what is working and what you'll then take with you as you move forward in the future. So I'll throw it to you, Patrick, first to shed some light on this.
Yeah, sure. I think first and foremost, I miss hospitality. I think getting together with friends and family and relaxing and enjoying a lot of these places is missed, and I'm excited to see the lights starting to come back on. I think about just trends that were happening already in the hospitality industry that maybe get accelerated with what's going on now. I think about locally sourced food and, maybe a slant towards more healthy options and things like that. I think also a focus on people, the particularly those that work in the hospitality industry, just thinking about how to get them back to work and better ways and ways to think about, just just the human element of what a challenging industry this can be, late hours and things like that. So I think that, we start to accelerate, a lot of those trends that were already happening. So I think, those are kind of something that's going on. The other thing that I think that New Orleans has going for it that is kind of a real, like a true sense of city, a sense of place. I think about Ray Oldenburg's book, The Great Good Place. I don't know if anyone on the line or maybe some of the operators that are on this line have read that book, but it's one that comes to mind when I think about creating places. There's home and there's the office, but there's also this third place that you can go and relax and enjoy. And I think that is in a way kind of what makes New Orleans so special. Even there, I guess there's a Tennessee Williams quote that says, New Orleans, San Francisco, and New York are the only real cities in America, and everywhere else is Cleveland. So I think that, we have real culture. We've got real relationships built in this community. And I think that there's a path forward that's just more collective.
Amen to that. I just want to remind everyone again, if you could keep yourself muted, that way we don't have feedback and can hear our panelists. So we'll move on to Caroline. I want to pose the same question to you as thinking about innovation and creativity. What have you sort of found during this time that's working that you'll then continue in your future business?
That's a great question, particularly because we actually haven't really been posed with the problem. We're like living in this weird design bubble outside of COVID where all of our projects are really like opening 2 years from now. And I think everybody, just to piggyback on what Patrick was saying, like everybody wants to come back together. And I feel like our clients right now are not eager to jump on the bandwagon of like, okay, design this restaurant that's going to open in 2 years to be like 6 feet apart. I think everybody's hopeful that, we go out to restaurants to be around other people. Even if we're not talking to everybody in the restaurant, I feel like we're going to people watch. We're going to hear other, get the vibe of being around a lot of other people. So I guess short term, we really haven't been super affected by it. We are like working with Tulane to revise their floor plans in their like large dining facilities and the student union to figure out, basically table spacing. And I mean, a small challenge within that is when people can't sit at a table, how do we still make this space feel really hospitable by not, putting caution tape everywhere, but instead, putting a plant on the table where you can't sit, things like that. So I feel like that's not a great answer to your question because I feel like we're in these projects that are in La La Land of 2 years from now when we don't really know what's happening. But I don't know. That's just kind of where we are.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent advice. No one has the right answer right now, so all we can do is kind of keep these discussions going and piggyback off of each other. Brian, I want to turn to you. I know that your hotel in particularly remained open the entire time. Maybe share a little bit of how you pivoted and what's working that you guys will continue moving forward in the future.
Thanks, Rebecca. I think we're still pivoting. Just for the record, it's kind of an ongoing process. We learn a little bit something new every day. Our service, one of the things that we were very concerned about was that our level of service in the building has always been extremely high, and so could we carry that off wearing a mask and keeping 6 feet distance and all the kind of the barriers that are built around that human contact that we rely on in our industry. So I actually think that as we come out this, we can't have self-serve buffets or we do wine and cheese in the evening for our guests. And observe themselves. And so what it's really kind of turned it into a more intimate level of service, because now we do table service for those things. And it's just, if anything, it's elevated the product that we had. I think we'll be keeping a lot of that in place as we move forward. I think what Carolyn said, it's really, really hard to look in the crystal ball and say, well, we're gonna plant our flag on this, because in the long run, you know, we don't know what's going to happen 3 weeks from now, much less 6 months. And so I just think it's a matter of being very, very agile as you go through your operation on a daily basis, and making sure that you remember the human side of that is, you always keeping an open dialogue with your team, making sure that they're tuned into those changes, because they're the ones in the long run that are going to start getting disjointed as you go through these stages. And so just keep them in the loop and make sure that they know what's going on, because it's a scary time, I think, for all of us. And that's it. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. We're learning new things every day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think agility is sort of the biggest theme around staying relevant and successful in any industry. Steve, I want to turn it over to you. Another word that has been thrown around a lot is people, focusing on people, and also energy. I'm excited to say I had my first business lunch back after the quarantine at Palace Cafe, and it was delicious, and obviously the service was impeccable as normal. How are you working within all of your restaurants to provide the same level of customer experience, providing that high energy that we're all used to in New Orleans, and sort of maintaining the same sense of togetherness that we have here in our city? Steve, are you with us? Frozen? I think, Steve, you're frozen.
Hello.
He's
Oh,
muted.
he's back. You're back.
There you go.
Okay, I'll go back to so just to emphasize what Brian was saying about changing every day. It's just constant change, and you're learning all the time. Energy was one of the concerns that we had as we went back because of the table spacing. But fortunately, we have large restaurants, and it allows enough spacing, but not losing the energy. One of the other restaurants, Palace, is open. Bourbon House is open. Miss Caroline Farouki did the interior design on that one, so thank you, Caroline. It's done very, very well. I was saying before the meeting that we're experiencing about somewhere around 50%, 25%, 50% increase week over week as a result of people open. So I think what that shows a pent up demand that people want to get out. They want to feel safe. They want to get out. So you have to create an environment that allows them to feel safe, but also have the energy that they're looking for, that they're missing. We actually shifted for decades. We've used a 3-man team. We shifted to a 1-man team because of a single point of contact between the guest and the service staff. So that's allowed them to be, I think, a lot more successful. We kind of moved the commissary opened up right April 21st. So, but it was ready to be born. We had to give birth to it. Kind of like Patrick was saying a couple of days beforehand, the pandemic started, you still have to go. That's allowed us to do more takeout, and emphasis on but in the restaurants that are open downtown, we're seeing the pent up demand, lunch and dinner, is people just coming out and enjoying themselves. And so you just have to create the energy, and you can do that through lighting and through music, as well as a proper table spacing, and then the way you seat the restaurant to create an environment that people find well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Steve. Mike, happy to see you now.
Yeah, I think I got it all worked out here. Good morning, everyone.
Well, I'm going to throw a question over to you. Obviously, tourism is one of our largest stimulants in our economic development here in New Orleans, and obviously our state. with our social distancing requirements, large events have obviously been canceled. So we're all dying to hear, what is the future of conventions in New Orleans?
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss this today. You know, obviously the convention center is a big economic engine for the city, the state, and the region. And we've been hugely impacted, as you can imagine. Our meeting planners from around the country are looking to how do they return, because they want to come to New Orleans. You know, of all the places they want to go to, this is one of our top choices always. So they're depending on us to help them determine what are the future guidelines for how you have safe meetings, you know, in our building. So we've been focused on not only hosting a medical monitoring facility around the country. And by the way, comments from our customers from around the country, they're so impressed that our convention center stepped up to serve the community in the way that we did. But now it's a matter of how do we dismantle that and return it in a safe environment so that we can once again host big conferences. So we have engaged with an industrial hygienist. We have a plan that we put together with our resilience team on what are the standards that we need to adhere to. In fact, we're working on an accreditation, a global accreditation that we're on the task force for all convention centers around the country. So our lead role in that will also lead us to be one of the first certified facilities that will be considered safe and able to host conventions when they return eventually. So as Steve has mentioned, you know, some of the things that we're focused on are how do we do new room sets? You know, when you think about a grand ballroom or a great hall that we call it, it's 60,000 square feet and can host 6,000 people. Well, typically when we do that, you know, where there's a certain amount of spacing involved in it, and you know, we've always had people more together than apart. So a 6,000 square foot ballroom now becomes a 2,000 square foot ballroom in its capacity. And then how do we incorporate technology that allows guests to participate if they're not able to travel here, but also if they're in other rooms and we have to remotely send the signal into that room so they can have conference and have speakers that they would before all of this. So we're focused on what the new standards are in the future. And not only that, how do we bring our employees back into a safe environment? We actually brought them back this week, and we have them working on refreshing projects. And how do we bring them into when we eventually bring all of our 500 back, how do we bring them into a safe environment as well? So 250 employees brought back to the center this week. We're excited that we at least have an opportunity to see them and interact with them, although safely. But how do we make that the new normal and create standards that bring us back together again? So we've been quite busy, as you can imagine.
Sounds like it. I think that was all a myth that we were going to have some downtime here, right? Well, I'm excited to hear that we're going to be one of the first certified institutions to host conventions. So thank y'all for working very hard on that. Again, that stimulates everyone here on the call today. Shifting over to Patrick, I know you have your hand in many aspects of the industry, from development, brokerage, property management, and design. How do you plan on creating more resilient business models?
You know, just listening to Michael, it's the thing that comes to mind is this concept of open sourcing. You know, there's a book that I just recently finished. It's called Show Your Work, Steal Like an Artist. You know, it's by Austin Kleon, but that to me is kind of a theme I think that's going on right now, where, you know, so many of us have learned from leaders who've gone before, and even this concept of, you know, certified buildings that are clean and in the right way and done properly. So I think what we see right now too is just, whether it's Google or technology companies, so much of what we're doing is open source. And so, you know, I'm sure I've looked at designs that Caroline's done and gained inspiration from that. You know, and I think about a lot of people who've come through the Brennan organization and how successful they've been by just learning the ways and best practices, guys like Paul Prudon and Emerald, and even, you know, Kevin Rathburn in Atlanta. So to me, I'm excited about, you know, how we share and how we find best practices and just do things better. So to me, I gain and learn inspiration from a lot of those around me, and really rely on experts to give us the opportunity to participate and add ideas or maybe our operating perspective when we get into new endeavors.
Excellent. Yeah, I had a teacher in interior design. She said there's only 5 design ideas, so just steal it and make it better. I don't know if that was the best advice, but I would hear. I do want to remind everyone that we are utilizing the chat window. If you go to the bottom toolbar, there is a little chat and you can ask questions. So at the end of my questions, we're going to be turning to the audience and answering some of your questions. So please feel free to write your chat in or your question in the chat window. And we have someone monitoring that right now. So Mike, I'm going to turn it back to you. It was interesting. We've heard a couple of people talking about technology and how we're going to continue to bring people together. Is rather than just using the physical space, is there a way that you have plans to utilize the new what do we call it? The lawn or the promenade on the front, and then how you're using technology to maybe bring people around the country into conventions and experience New Orleans in a different way?
Sure. I think we're kind of fortunate at this point in time that we're going through a major renovation and major repositioning. And if you've been along Convention Center Boulevard lately, you notice that we built some pretty significant outdoor spaces. You wouldn't think that at a time like this during the summer that you could have events outdoors, but we have some really big fans that we put out there. And we have taken into account what a meeting would look like into a park. So we put the fiber out into the linear park and into those areas because we expect that people are going to want to be outdoors or out into our public spaces instead of confined in the meeting rooms. And that gives us an opportunity to really expand, to do things in a reimagined way, in a leading edge way that others haven't really only have dabbled in a little bit, but we believe we're in a good position. And add to that the fact that we're going to go through a $500 million renovation of our interior spaces. We take into account this opportunity that we have to really reinvent how meetings happen and incorporate technology into that. I can't say that I'm the expert on knowing how that will all happen, but we're going to have a charrette in July. We're going to bring some of the best and brightest minds together, local and nationally, to discuss what is the Convention Center of tomorrow designed like, and what should it be positioned like, and what are those new technologies. We'll have customer input for that as well. So we believe we're in a really good place to recover from this COVID and this pandemic economic downturn. So we feel good about where we're heading in the future because fortunately we approved a plan and we have it funded and we're moving that forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Caroline, I know Steve Pettus just gave you a prop on a beautiful restaurant you helped him design. You can also experience some of your other beautiful designs and saffron, maypop, to name a few. I know you mentioned there's not necessarily any immediate need for change, but in terms of communication with your current clients, how have you seen that shift during this time where you can't have on-site in-person meetings? And is there any tools or technology that you will be implementing in the future based on how you've been able to communicate during this time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like right before everything shut down, we flew down to Grand Cayman to kick off a project. So like 35 people from all across the country went down to Grand Cayman. We were in a room together, and like the next day I come back to New Orleans and everything shuts down. And I think Sabri and I for 2 weeks, we were like, oh my God, do we have something? Because we were just in a small room with people from all over the country. But since then, obviously all of our meetings have had to be online. And I think actually Microsoft Teams, not that I'm going to like plug a program, but we've, one of our clients really pushed hard to do all of our communication via Microsoft Teams. Like 0 emails are sent. It's all through Microsoft Team chats and the different like channels that you can create. So I think Microsoft Teams has been something that we probably wouldn't have used had it not been for the challenges of not meeting in person, but I think we'll probably continue to use. So as far as meetings go, I mean, we were actually pretty used to working remotely since our projects are all over. But I think the real challenge with interior design has been material, like getting approvals on materials, because that, a picture just can't do it justice. So that's been really the only major challenge, because we're so used to presenting, digitally. That really hasn't been a huge problem, but learning Microsoft Teams and then just dealing with shipping materials all over. But yeah, that's about it.
Great. Obviously, we like to use Microsoft Teams here as well.
Yeah.
Everyone. Steve, I'm going to throw it back to you. I know one of the things I admire about your company is the culture and the culture of family throughout all of your restaurants. It's evident in every dining experience that we have. Whether an employee is coming in to work a summer job or whether they're making a career in one of your establishments, it's definitely sort of shows throughout, again, those experiences that we have. What has been y'all's biggest challenge bringing all of your people back, keeping that sense of family, and making sure they feel safe and they're still creating that same experience?
I think communication's the real key. It's just, I find that, we're moving at such a quick pace in our office environment, as we're trying to get the restaurants back open. We don't realize that a lot of people are basically just sitting at home waiting, to come back. And so we haven't always communicated as best as I think we could, but we try to make up for it. And we're getting ready to put out another mass email later today. Try and do them at least once every 10 days as we go through this, because there's a lot of uncertainty. But at the same time, I would say we'll try to communicate things. But as Brian was talking about earlier, things change so quickly that when you communicate something, the next day, whatever you communicated has changed. And I think people become a little bit frustrated with that. But they take comfort in knowing that you care, that you're communicated. We've done things on, classes on how to file for unemployment. We have a helpline for an EAP, it's an employee assistance program. We also have person on staff that helps them with any questions they have about anything. So this is it's not 24 hours, they can answer it like 8 to 10 hours a day. And it's surprising that just like I believe that I think online is going to be a means of communications for the future, but I also believe that people derive a certain amount of energy and comfort from dining together. We know we have to eat, and I think we enjoy the comfort, as Patrick said, the company of others, and enjoy that. And I will tell you that same enjoyment is experienced by those with whom we work. Because this morning I had steakhouse is closed right now, will be opening hopefully soon. But we had some of the team members from the steakhouse come over to Palace Cafe and are working today. And you're getting virtual hugs, from these folks, because they're just excited to be back and to be part of something. And it's so we provide a safe environment. Long before this started, we've had an emphasis on safety and sanitation. The state requires every food service establishment to have a ServSafe certified individual on staff. We have every single manager in the company, every culinarian is ServSafe certified. And so we have over 200 in the company that are ServSafe certified. And that too leads to a sense of comfort for them, knowing that their safety, their well-being is a priority. So when they come in, we call it the threshold issue. Once they cross the threshold, they know they're here, they know they're safe, they know they're surrounded by people that care about them. So we'll continue that.
Excellent, thank you. And Brian, I think I have the most important question for you. I think all frequent travelers want to know, is this the end of the mini bar as we know it?
No, we did not take our mini bars out of the rooms, and we kind of looked at it from the standpoint that I think people are, so we're having a 48-hour time between occupancy in the room. So if a guest checks out, that room sits vacant for 48 hours. Even our housekeeping team does not go into it. Then we go in and we sanitize and clean and restore it to its glory. We have seen, while we don't have big numbers from an occupancy standpoint, we've seen our guests much more comfortable dining in their room and actually using the mini bar. So, if you absolutely need a mini bar, Rebecca, you're welcome to come stay at my hotel. I could use the business, and I would not
Perfect.
a special rate or anything, but we.
I thought we were friends, Brian.
But a lot like
I think my boss is tuning into this call, so I'll just get his approval to expense it. So then it's a win-win for everyone.
I do think, Steve hit on a point, and we talk internally about, kind of approaching this situation. We've got a lot of things going on right now. We've got COVID. We certainly have, the events, the unfortunate events of the last month, and moving forward, we are celebrating Juneteenth today, and my company this is a company paid holiday. I'm very proud to say. But as we are moving through all these very, very difficult times, we kind of approach it with our teams as using. I tell our leaders we have to use humility, humanity, and honesty, right? And if we approach our teams with those three things and make sure that they know everything that's going on, that we're honest with them about the fact that sometimes it shakes us up too. They are all invested, and Steve's right. They're so excited. They miss us as much as we miss them, and it's really fun. When you get to interact with folks that you haven't seen in a while, and you realize how much of a family that you really are. So the mini bar is hotel at least not going away. I'm happy to report, yes, and we're working on some unique and unique solutions for our honor bar, which we have a self-service honor bar in our lobby for those of you that don't know that. And so we're trying to do some pre-mixed stuff so that the guests aren't, rummaging through the bottles and all that fun stuff. So we're getting there. But again, every day is different.
Very nice. Well, before we move over to our audience questions, I'm just going to go through all of our panelists and see if you can leave us with maybe a silver lining that's come out of this pandemic that we've all experienced. And Patrick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that there's from potentially a zoning and even legislative standpoint, I could see some things that really provide some opportunity in the hospitality industry. Locally, I know there's been conversation about limiting driving into the French Quarter and Royal Street, for example. Maybe some of the restaurants having the opportunity to have kind of more of a European vibe in that space, and I feel like that would be a major game changer for the quarter for people to be able to dine, on some of those walkways and things like that. So, I could see that opening up too. Embedded in the CARES Act is this qualified improvement property function that, interior build outs, which include, restaurants and commercial spaces, you can fully depreciate, all of those improvements year one when they were typically a 15-year depreciation schedule. So it's an incentive for people to take the risk to try and, maybe see some of those dreams that they wanted to see through. There's some sort of structural incentives, I think, that are out there that, previously were off the table and now are there to entice people to do it. So, I think there can be some local zoning changes, and I think that we've had some tax legislation that's come through that, part of that CARES Act was to support employees through this tough time. So I think that's served in some ways, in a lot of ways not perfect, but hopefully what comes of it are new ideas and big ideas that we maybe revisit some things that we hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, excellent. Caroline, any silver linings?
I think what I'm excited about is, people are being forced to spend more time outside. And how can we make our city more hospitable in kind of a wet, sticky climate? I think is a really interesting challenge that we, rethink quantity of outdoor space, occupiable outdoor space, and just enhancing those experiences, because I think in New Orleans in particular, it's not a place where where people really invest a lot of money because it is so hot and sticky. So I think it'll be interesting to see how people really amp up the ambiance in their outdoor spaces, and how, it's going to be good for all of us to spend more time outside long term. So hopefully that continues even after, the time when we're inside so much, or when we can be inside so much.
Absolutely. I think that was a very nice observation of mine as well, that the parks were all being used to their fullest, which was good to see. Steve, can you leave us with any final thoughts or silver lining?
I think silver lining, we have gotten through this, or we're getting through this. And if you look back, whether it was the pandemic of 1918, 1920, the Great Depression, World War II, and any of those things, this is not a small event. For us, Katrina was like the high water mark, or literally the high water mark of our lifetime. And yet we collectively, not just as a community, and not just as a country, but as a world, have gone through something collectively that brings us closer together, gives us hopefully a greater appreciation for each other, for people in general. So I think that's an important part. I think that it was a silver lining that I saw was Congress can actually work together for the betterment of the country when they need to. I sometimes have wondered about whether that could happen, but they've proven, like Pat was talking, with the CARES Act or any of those that have come out have been great. I think we have a higher focus on sanitation, and people, are realizing when they cough, they don't just cough, they cough into their elbow or something. So, but I think that the biggest part for me is that we realize, it gave us a moment of pause to realize that for people are what's important in the whole grand scheme of things. So that's it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brian?
It's been a very cathartic experience. It's like, I think the silver lining is that the value of human interaction that you may have discounted before is now, you see the engagement of the guests, and there's so much value whenever you're not, all of a sudden your guests and the people that you interact with every day are kind of taken away from you. And as we kind of build back through this, I can see the light, and certainly in a lot of the my staff, where, we kind of joke, it's like we really want somebody just to come ask us dumb questions about New Orleans, because we this is what we do. And so the opportunity to appreciate so deeply those interactions, I think is really the silver lining, and reminding us how much we love what we do, and that we represent our city, and we're so very proud of that. So that's kind of it.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Mike, can you want to share any silver linings? I think you might be muted. Michael, I think you might be muted.
Okay.
There we go.
How about now? All right. Well, what I said was I agree with everything everyone else said, so I'm done. No, for us, we're at that point in time where a couple of things have happened over the course of this period that, like others mentioned, that we learn to appreciate the people that we have that contribute what they do every day. In our case, we're able to keep all of our employees together, throughout this whole period. And the appreciation that they have for the support that we've given them, that we haven't had layoffs or furloughs, and we were properly reserved enough to be able to do that. And we believe that was important because in the very first event that we have, people expect that we are fully ready to go, whatever that might be. And we don't have to go back and assemble the expertise and experience that it takes to pull off a world-class convention. So we were able to do that, and they appreciate the fact that we did that and we supported them. The other is that because of all this and because we're going through a transformation, it helped us to more easily define what the demands are going to be in the future. You know, we oftentimes have to spend time trying to figure that out on our own. And but now it's going to be a little bit easier to define because we know that safety has always been a key for us for any convention center, but now it takes on an all new meaning. And so I think in the future that we're going to be able to really tap into what the hot buttons are for our meeting planners, to take an opportunity to listen to them and to what they need. And frankly, you think about what happened with the legislature this last week, where we actually passed legislation that limits liability that our meeting planners will have for issues that could happen during a meeting. That's huge because we're one of the first places in the country to do that. And that's going to really solve a lot of issues for our customers and get them to come back more readily and certainly a lot quicker than they might in other places.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And at this point, I think we're going to turn to the chat window. We have Alexis monitoring that. Do we have any burning questions to ask the panelists?
Hi, everybody. We have about 4 questions so far, but please feel free to submit any more. I'll go in order in which we received them. The first, please explain table service and what that looks like.
It's yours, Steve.
Well, I was hoping it was mine, but I didn't want to just jump in. So, table service is different now in the sense that, like I said earlier, we've gone from a single point of from a 3-man team to a single person. A person does not handle dirty dishes. The same person that serves food does not handle dirty dishes. We have another person that, we're all wearing masks, of course, and then has gloves, busses the table, and then brings them back, sanitizes again, and then continues back on with their job. We have a person that their only job is to walk around and they're constantly wiping contact surfaces. We have what we call it's an all clean call. It's every 30 minutes in the kitchens. We're doing those, doing an all clean of all stations. You won't see as many items on the table as you would have, say, 6 months ago. There's no salt and pepper shaker on the table. It's provided for you, upon request, and then it's put into a dirty station to be cleaned after it's used. Silverware is wrapped and is currently being put into a plastic sleeve after it's been sanitized, wrapped by one individual who's working in a clean environment, and then it goes into a location where it's provided at one customer each in a plastic wrap. So it's a little bit, I wouldn't say less personal. It's not as informal as it used to be, just because it's hard to communicate as effectively with a smile when you're wearing a mask, and but you're able to talk a lot more with your eyes now than you ever have before. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks so much. The second question, what steps are reopening restaurants taking to enforce seating limitations? I think, Steve, that's back to you.
What steps to enforce seating limitations? Well, 2 things. Forget who mentioned it earlier, but they talked about if you have a table, and I mean, Caroline, you might have a plant on that table. If you have too many tables in your restaurant to exceed the capacity, you might have a plant. My wife came up with the idea of having nameplates reserved for Nancy Pelosi, reserved for Dr. Fauci, reserved for 70 different ones that we couldn't see. for example, booths. We have at Bourbon House we have 7 booths, and we can only seat every other one. And so in the ones that we couldn't seat, we put reserved, and then made reserved for Mickey Mouse or something like that, just to get a smile out of people. But for the most part, we've restricted we pulled the number of tables that were necessary to provide the safe distance as required by the phase 2 guidelines, and that's it. Just remove the tables, and then if we're on a wait, then people wait outside, and we have outside seating at Palace Cafe, at Acorn, which is a restaurant in the Children's Museum of the Park, which has really done well because people just get to sit. Almost all of the tables are outside, but by pulling the tables, spacing them properly, and having large restaurants allows us the ability to space properly and still have a pretty large seating capacity.
Great, thanks so much. Sorry. The last question, this is for you, Mike. Obviously, a significant revenue for the convention center is derived from receptions. Could you share with us what you believe receptions will look like for the fall as we are hopefully either entering phase 3 and then going into 2021? What is your team telling their clients?
Well, more than anything, they're telling them about the protocols that we're going to have for staff, to make sure they can come back in a safe environment. I remember when I ran hotels years ago that, we were always so busy that if someone didn't have a doctor's note, they couldn't miss work. Well, today, when we've got people coming back into the building, our employees are going to have their temperature checked and have masks, of course. So it's a different perspective. I expect that we're going to have a healthier workforce, and we're going to be healthier and safer for our clients as well. So the spacing and the receptions, whether it's the tables or whether it's the amount of capacities, we're adjusting our capacities down, as I mentioned before. So we're going to have a lot more that are outdoor receptions. I think that we're working with our clients on what are those capacities and what do they want to see, and can we spread people out more into our more open spaces. So we do have a client advisory board as well as interacting with our meeting planners individually, and we're going to have them help guide us as far as what they're hearing and what their own company standards or their own trade show standards might be. But my guess is that we're going to have more in exhibit halls and probably less things on buffets and stations, more boxed lunches and things that are individually packaged, like Steve mentioned, when it comes to things that we serve in a reception or a sit-down environment.
Would you mind just elaborating a little bit more on the welcome receptions, such as past hors d'oeuvres, buffets, sneeze guards, grab and go, things like that?
Sure. I think that the sneeze guards are obviously something that we're all going to grow accustomed to when it comes to any setup in any type of environment like that. But I don't know about the particular things that the caterer has gotten involved in their standards. I know that they're currently having those conversations, and it'll be something that they incorporate across the country. But you're right, past hors d'oeuvres, things like that probably won't happen in the future, and certainly not the buffet style things. So they're developing those protocols now, and there'll be those that'll be spread throughout all of our operations in the country. We're fortunate that Center Plate and Sodexo are one of the largest food service companies in the country. So we expect that our catering standards and reception standards will be leading edge and among the best that are developed anywhere.
All right, one last wonderfully stated comment that I'd like to share. Thank you, all of the guests, for sharing such a positive outlook on your experience, and more importantly, where we're headed coming out of this experience. Thank you to everyone at AOS for hosting this series.
Thank you. Well, I just want to echo that again. I want to thank all of our esteemed panelists today for lending their insight on how we will ultimately emerge smarter. And I want to thank all of our participants that have tuned in virtually. As I mentioned, this is the second of a series where we are discussing resiliency, and be on the lookout for our invitation for next month, where we'll be focused on the entertainment industry. So thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a happy Father's Day.
Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
at US.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.